If you're the sort of player that makes a lot of excuses when they play, I'm going to help you with that in this video by explaining how you can train your mindset so that you can focus your energy towards the things that you can control and the problem solving that you need to do when you're playing a match. So hopefully you find the video helpful. If you do, it'd be awesome if you could give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel before, it also really helps me out if you could do that as well. So what I'm going to explain to you is a very simple process, but although it's simple, it can be relatively challenging to do because it takes a lot of energy and focus in order to make it happen. Now, I used to be a massive excuse maker when I was younger. I would come up with a number of different reasons why I'd lose a match, and it was worse than that for me. I would start making excuses before I even lost the match. So if I was a break of serve down, I would come up with a list of reasons, things that I could tell my friends to kind of excuse me from losing. And it was pretty ridiculous. Fortunately, I was able to solve that by going through the process that I'm going to explain to you today. But oddly enough, this is something that I've actually slipped back into. I've switched from playing right-handed to left-handed due to an injury, and as a left-handed player, I've noticed that I've now got a tendency to start making excuses. If it's windy or if I get a bad bounce or there's any unfavorable conditions, rather than doing what I should be doing and asking myself the question, okay, what can I do? What can I control in this situation? I've slipped back into excuse making. So it's something that I'm working on again. But I think the reason that I've slipped back into the excuse making with my left hand is because of the amount of energy it takes. You know, I've been learning, you have to think about the technique, there's all this stuff going on, and I didn't have the bandwidth to deal with the mental side of things. So that now that I've got the bandwidth again, now I'm refocusing on my mentality, becoming more positive and getting rid of the excuse making. So the process is really simple. You have to consciously recognize when you're making an excuse, and you have to intercept it and replace the excuse with something else. And there's a couple of options. It could be a positive affirmation. So when you start to make an excuse, you could replace that excuse with I'm a positive player, I fight for every point, and you could just say that over and over again in your head to kind of drown out the excuse making. The other thing you can do is ask yourself a question: what can I do in this situation, or what can I control in this situation? And then you can come up with an answer to that. And in the example that I just gave with my left hand, I'm really struggling in windy conditions. I start to make excuses and blame the wind. When it's windy, now what I've started to do is go, okay, what can I do in this situation? Right, I need to focus on moving my feet more. I need to be lighter on the toes, on the balls of my feet. I need to think about the wind and account for it. So if it's blowing in towards me, I need to allow a little bit more space and kind of create more distance between me and the ball to account for the wind, and kind of focus on the footwork side of things. So you've got both of the options. You've got positive affirmation or asking yourself what you can do in the situation. So it's very simple. You just become consciously aware of it, stop it, and replace it with the other one. But like I said, although it's simple, it does take a lot of energy to do this and a lot of focus, because if you've been making excuses for years and years and years, it's going to be a habit by now. It's going to be automated. It's not going to be a conscious thing. So you're going to be out on court, a situation's going to arise, and you'll just automatically start to make those excuses. So you have to set your intentions before you go on court. It's deliberate practice, just like practicing anything else. You go out there with a plan, and your plan is, right, I have made the decision that I need to change my mindset. I need to stop making excuses so that I can be a better competitor. So when I go out on court today, I'm going to be aware. I'm going to be aware of the things that I say to myself. And if I say those things, or I start to say those things, I'm going to replace it with this. And it can actually be a good idea to write two lists down. Write down a list of the things that you kind of say to yourself, the negative things, the excuses that you make, so that you can be consciously aware of those. And then write down a list of things that you can say to yourself that are positive, or ways that you can deal with scenarios that tend to come up and that you tend to make excuses for. So you write down the thing that you want to stop, and then write down the thing that you want to replace it with. And you can actually do a little bit of visualization before you go out on court. So you can imagine yourself being in a scenario. Okay, I step up for a short forehand, it takes a bad bounce, normally where you'd miss the shot and you'd make an excuse and get angry with yourself. Now you can kind of visualize that happening, visualize saying to yourself, what can I do in this situation? Absolutely nothing. It was a ridiculous bounce, couldn't do anything about it. reset, start the next point and carry on, rather than have the repetitive negative cycle. So you can visualize doing this before you step out on court, and you just have to keep doing this process, because it's like anything else. You have to go through the phases of learning. At the moment, the excuse making is a habit. You've got to break that habit very consciously, deliberately stopping that thought, replacing it with this thought, and there'll be a tug of war for a while where you slip into that and you'll try and do this. But the more times you do it, you'll create new neural pathways in the brain, because our brains are plastic, they constantly change. They either get worse or they get better. So if you constantly make excuses, that happens more and more. But if you break that cycle and you keep being more and more positive, eventually you'll rewire your brain so that you'll just automatically start to problem solve and be more positive when you play. So it's a case of really going through this process. But if you do go through that process, it will make a massive difference in your performances on court, but also your enjoyment for the game, because it's much better when things are under your control rather than being left at the mercy of the framing or shanking gods, the wind gods and the bad bounce gods. It's much better to have control yourself. You've just got to set the intention of changing the way that you think and retraining your brain, and understanding that the brain is plastic. It will change if we make it change, and then you just have to go through the process of doing it. So give that a try. Let me know how you get on. Hopefully it'll be very beneficial for you. If you'd like to learn more about different ways to train and improve the mental side of tennis, that's one of the big things that I help tennis players with, because I teach players how to use brain-based training. So here we're talking about kind of deliberate training for the mental process, but there are also different things that you can do to train these parts of the brain to really speed up and increase the likelihood of seeing good success. So if you'd like to learn more about that, I'll place a link to a masterclass that I've created down in the description. I'll place a link up there. But hopefully you have enjoyed this video. I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Let me know in the comment section, are you an excuse maker? What sort of things do you normally make excuses about? Let's see if we can change it and help you to be a much better competitor.